Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zoeller, and today I'm going to be presenting you a video screencast on the United States geography and Native Americans. So the objective for this screencast is that you will be able to analyze the ways in which American Indians of 8 different cultural regions adapted to their environments. So first thing we need to look at is what is an environment? What environment are you in? So an environment includes all the physical surroundings in a place. That would include the land, water, animals, plants, and climate. And within the environment, we're going to find natural resources. And natural resources are useful materials found in nature. So that includes water, vegetation, which is plants, animals, and different minerals. And then groups of people that live in different parts of America in these different geographical regions have their own cultures. So what is a culture? It's a people's way of life. That includes whether their beliefs, their customs, the food they eat, their dwellings, their type of clothing. And we'll find out that all that is influenced by the geography, by the environment, by the natural resources. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the 8 different cultural regions of the United States today, and looking at the Native Americans in those areas. So the first one we're going to look at is the Northwest Coast. So the Northwest Coast is going to include parts of British Columbia and Canada, and then we would say parts of the state of Washington and even down into Oregon a little bit. So for the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington State, and parts of Idaho, region covers Oregon up through Canada along the Pacific Ocean. Cold winters and cool summers, and they have a lot of rain up there. Dense forests, lots of trees, lots of seafood since they're near the coastline. And they're going to be building their structures out of wood houses since they have a lot of those natural resources there. And here's an example of a home that a Native American would have in the Northwest. Next, we're going to look at the Great Basin. So here's a picture of kind of that area. So Native Americans in the Great Basin. So this would be the area east of California, so between the Sierra Nevada mountain range and the Rocky Mountains. And since the mountain ranges block the rain, this region is mostly desert, so they don't get a lot of rain there. So they have very hot summers, cold winters, and the Indians in this area have to migrate for food, so they have to go wherever the food is. And they would eat seeds, grasshoppers, and rabbits, whatever was in the desert. So living in the Great Basin. So with limited food and water, only a few families could live in a place. For this reason, people in this region traveled in small groups and spent much of their time looking for food. So they're scavengers looking around to survive. So they're never staying in one place. For the Plateau is our next region we're going to look at. It's a pretty picture there. So Native Americans of the Plateau. So this is north of the Great Basin. The region is bounded by the Cascade Range to the west, that's up in Washington State, and the Rockies to the east, and Canada to the north. The mountains have dense forests, and the flatter central part is drier and covered with grass and sagebrush. So winters are very long and cold there, while the summers are mild. They're gentle there. So for the Plateau region, they have large rivers. Salmon's a major part of their diet, their food supply. Basket weaving can be important for them, and they hunted deer. For the Southwest, so this would include the states today of Arizona, New Mexico, southern Utah, Colorado, and portions of Texas, Oklahoma, and California. It's a big area. And so this region has many different environments. So there's canyons, mountains, deserts, flat-topped mesas. There's 2 major rivers in the Southwest, the Colorado River, so that's where you'll find the Grand Canyon, and the Rio Grande, which is the border between Mexico and Texas today. So it's a pretty major river. So the heat and lack of rain and water made living here a challenge. So it's going to be a very desert type of place. And so Native Americans would be nomadic, which means they're going to be going from place to place. They're hunter-gatherers, very similar to the Great Basin Native Americans, where they have to go and find their food. In some areas they would grow corn. They'd also grow cotton they could use into clothing. Some tribes lived in the cliffs, and that's where they would stay. And they had clay pots, and adobe would be their homes as well. So different parts of the Southwest, it's a huge area. Native Americans would live there kind of different ways. So for the Great Plains, what we call kind of the Midwest of the United States. So for the Great Plains, middle part of America, this is going to go from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Mississippi River, and from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's a very large area. The eastern part is wet. The western part has grasslands, good for millions of buffalo to graze. And then buffalo was used in every part of their life. So the Great Plains Native Americans would hunt the buffalo, And once the Spanish begin colonizing and coming into the Americas, they'll be introducing the horses they brought from Europe, and that is going to allow these tribes to be more mobile and to get to the buffalo quicker since they'll have horses. But before the introduction of Europeans, they didn't have any horses when they would hunt buffalo. For the eastern woodlands, so this is the region that reaches from the Mississippi River to the west all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in the east, and from Canada to about North Carolina. And so the winter snows and the summer rains, so it produces lots of forests, and they have lots of lakes and streams. So for the Native Americans that live in this area, the dense forests are going to be home to deer, beavers, and other wildlife. That would be their food, providing them for their clothing as well from those animals, and shelter. And some of the major tribes there would be the Iroquois, the Algonquin, and they would use sunflowers, tobacco, squash, corn, maple syrup, nuts, and berries for their survival. And then for the southeast, so Native Americans of the southeast would be from Texas to the Atlantic Ocean. They had fertile coastal plains, which means there would be an area of land that would be flooded periodically from the ocean and would deposit rich nutrients into the soil. And they would have river valleys, mountains, and swamps. So they had large, long, warm, humid summers, mild winters, and long growing region. So they'd be able to grow crops for a long time. And so they would be growing corn in this area, beans, squash, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, wild rice, persimmons. They did have turkey as well, and they were mound builders. So they'd build their houses out of dirt and different things in the environment. All right, finally, the last region we're going to look at is California. So for California, features of the environment, this region stretched from southern Oregon to Baja California and the western side of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. It includes the coast, coastal foothills, inland valleys, and deserts. In the winter, it rains, and summers get pretty hot, of course, depending where you are in California. For the food, most of the tribes live near the coast, so salmon or shellfish were the most important food sources. Away from the coast, they would hunt deer, rabbits, and duck. They gathered roots, berries, pine nuts, and acorns were ground in meal, then they cooked. And then for their homes, they made simple homes made from slabs of redwood bark or constructed from thick woven reed mats draped over cone-shaped poles. So for thousands of years, these first people, these Native Americans, had the Americas to themselves. That would change when Europeans learned of the existence of the American continents, which we'll cover later. And Native Americans were a diverse group of people, so they spoke many different languages, and people living in different cultural regions developed their own distinctive ways of life that were suited to their environment's climate and natural resources. So all those 8 regions, if you look at each region, the Native Americans living there are going to be different. They're going to have different homes, they're going to have different clothing, they're going to have different foods, the different way they survive, and it's all based on their environment. So scientists study these ways of life by examining the artifacts America's first people left behind. So they look at what tools that they used, help them figure out what was in their environment. And depending on where they lived, Native Americans ate different food, built different kinds of houses, and clothed themselves in different ways. So Native Americans practiced many kinds of crafts, making such things as jewelry, fine baskets, and animal masks. And Native Americans built the first towns and villages in North America, and they were also the continent's first farmers. All right, so this is all for the screencast. Have a great day. Bye-bye.